The Theosophical Society presents Joy Mills in a talk entitled Integral Meditation.
Tonight, in concluding our series, I would like to draw together, if I can, all of the varied threads of our discussions and point up the integrated nature, the wholeness of what may be called the meditative life. At the outset of this series, those of you who have been with us through the entire series will remember that I suggested that meditation is an inner silent path, and also that it is a creative act, that it is a path that is inward, and that at the same time it is a creative act. I suggested that it is the art of being, the science of the self, the positive achievement of a leap of consciousness in which all areas of consciousness are harmonized, are alert, are focused. Perhaps another way of saying it is that this leap of consciousness is answered by a corresponding, shall we say, descent or illumination that seems to occur, in which a spark is fanned into a flame. Well, so as a consequence of looking at this broad area of meditation, we have given attention to one aspect after another in considering the general principles. We have not attempted in this series to go into detail in each particular school of meditation or each particular technique or form of practice, although I have tried to suggest, as you know, through the series, that these are principles that underlie all of the great schools, all of the techniques, certainly all of those schools to be found in the religious traditions, Christian meditation, the various forms of meditation in Hinduism, in Buddhism, the basis of Buddhist meditation, whether it be the school of Mahayana Buddhism, of Zen Buddhism, of Theravada Buddhism, whether it is in Islam, any of the great traditions, there are common principles. And so what I have tried to do in this series is to look at these common principles. The inner alignment of the vehicles of consciousness, first of all. And this cannot, I think, be stressed enough, the necessity for that kind of alignment that takes into account all of the vehicles of consciousness. And I mean by that does not disregard the existence of any of these vehicles, that doesn't say we must get rid of the emotional nature, as it were. After all, we can scarcely get rid of it, and nor do we want to get rid of it. This does not mean that we get rid of the mind. We don't go around in a mindless state. We certainly don't want to get rid of it. We may go beyond the mind, but we do not become mindless in the sense that we forget we have a mind and have to have others look after us because the mind is absent. It means that all elements of our being are aligned, are brought into harmony, given their proper due, not overemphasized at any point, but not underemphasized. Concentration, which is a focusing of all one's vision, one's energies to a point to which one wishes to give attention. Visualization, imagination, which is the expansion from that point outwards in a manner that enables a channel to be created for the reception of a new insight, a new understanding. And then in the past 2 weeks, we have looked at two very broad areas of meditation: introspective, intuitive, reflective meditation, and outward focused, what I tried to call last week, service-oriented meditation, creative meditation. in which a channel is created and utilized for a purpose. And I suggested perhaps the major areas in which creative meditation has been utilized is in healing and in the aspiration, the ideal of creating peace in the world. Now, in all of this, in other words, we have treated the subject of meditation as one aspect of our lives. That is, we have assumed that it is a practice in which one may engage for a certain portion of a day, let us say, a certain time each day, for a certain period of time, while the remainder of the day may be given over to other types of activities. Perhaps we get up in the morning, perhaps we have a certain routine where we have, after bathing, dressing, whatever we have, sometimes one has to have a cup of coffee first perhaps, but whatever the routine, then we have 10, 15, 30 minutes of meditation. And it's as though we can then say, well, now I have accomplished that, I'll go on and do the rest of my activities today. I'll be the same usual person that I always am, getting a little bit irritated with things, being very kind at other times, giving my attention here, there, and elsewhere, carrying on my normal routine. Now, what I would like to emphasize tonight in concluding our series is that it seems to me we have to come to a point where we see our existence as a whole, as a complete reality in which we are engaged, that our existence, our daily lives should be all of one piece, cut out of one piece of material, not pieced together of a half hour for this and a half hour for that and an hour for that and 20 minutes for something else and divide it up, allocate it in that way, but that we should come to see our whole existence, every single day, as a totality, as all of one piece, so that meditation and action are united in an integral whole that gives meaning and significance to our existence. To put it another way, I would like to suggest that our daily existence is meaningful only insofar as every aspect of our being is blended together towards a purpose. Now, this is an ideal that I'm putting before us tonight, putting before myself, because I always give these talks as much to myself as to anyone else. It's a good way of reminding myself of my own ideals. So I'm talking to myself, and you're listening in, as it were, on what seems to me the ideal. And therefore I've called this tonight integral meditation, because it means simply that every element in our nature, every aspect of our life, can be blended harmoniously in tune with the supreme purpose of life itself. I'm not sure that I can make this completely clear, but it does seem to me that we can learn to participate in the total scheme and purpose of evolution only as we make conscious the totality of that purpose within ourselves. Only if we can really make the purpose of evolution conscious in ourselves do we fulfill that purpose. This is the supreme paradox, perhaps. And the way we make that purpose conscious is through a dual process, the turning within in the silent path of inner awareness, which is meditation, and the moving without, boldly without, in the path of action. And the ideal then is that condition where this dual process is blended into a single whole, and we both move within and move without at the same moment, as it were. That every action in which we engage takes place against a background of serene contemplation. This, of course, is in one sense the reflection of the whole creative process, so beautifully expressed in the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. With one portion of myself, I pervade the universe, but I remain. The eternal witness, always there, and yet active in pervading the universe. This is the great duality often spoken of in Christian terminology of both the transcendence of God and the immanence of God. Active at every moment, and yet always against a background of transcendent reality. So I would like to suggest that the life of action is a life in the world, which is life in the temporal, in time. And we have to have a certain awareness of the temporal. We announced this meeting is at 8 o'clock, and you came at 8 o'clock or thereabouts. You realized this and made the effort that, all right, at 8 o'clock I was to be at a certain place. And I can assure you I will be aware of the time and will not keep you on and on and on into the wee hours of the morning or tomorrow, or, just keep you here. We'd like to have you stay, but we will be aware of time. The life of contemplation, on the other hand, is a life out of the world, which is life out of time, life in the eternal. We can often realize these two aspects in turning without into the world of the temporal, in which we carry on our daily existence, in which there is the historical process, as it has been called, and each one of us must participate in the historicity of the moment, as it has been said. We have our place in the historicity of existence. At the same time, the life of contemplation gives us a doorway into the non-temporal world of reality, which is the eternal. Now, the blending of these two, this is integral meditation. I suggest you see that there is a way of engaging in a living relationship with both the temporal and the eternal. A relationship, in other words, between activity and what may be called the spiritual life, the spiritual pursuit, in which these two aspects of life are seen not as separated, but as united, one with the other. Again, to quote the Bhagavad Gita, which is such a beautiful scripture, there is the statement, "Now you shall hear how a man may become perfect if he devotes himself to the work which is natural to him. A man will reach perfection if he does his duty as an act of worship to the Lord, who is the source of the universe, prompting all action, everywhere present." So we act, but with this background, which meditation provides for us, which becomes then an action that is a worship. In the heart of the Christian tradition, there is the ideal which has been set by the great example, the Master Jesus, who, it is said, by his incarnation gathered into one things earthly and heavenly. Who could act, but always acted out of the consciousness that I and my Father are one. And following that particular tradition, the great mystic John Ruysbroek wrote of the individual who lives his life in these two ways, namely in work and in rest, and in each he is whole and undivided. Now this is the clue, you see. He lives his life in two ways, in work and in rest, and in each he is whole and undivided, for he is wholly in God because he rests in fruition, and he is wholly in himself because he lives in activity, and he is perpetually called and urged by God to renew both the rest and the work. A very beautiful statement. So we, in one sense, are touching upon the whole subject which we have explored in previous series here, the whole area of mysticism, because it does touch upon this area, of course. I think, as I read and so on, that no one in our time has perhaps more elegantly and beautifully expressed what has been called the co-inherence between the temporal and the eternal than Teilhard de Chardin, who combined in himself the mystic, the priest, and the scientist, the paleontologist, who was out there in the fields, in the digs, and in his very remarkable and beautiful little book, The Mass on the World, he wrote, "For me, all joy, all achievement, the very purpose of my being, and all my love of life, all depend on this one basic vision of the union between yourself," with a capital U, this was addressed to God, "and the universe. Let others, fulfilling a function more august than mine, proclaim your splendors as pure spirit. As for me, dominated as I am by a vocation which springs from the inmost fibers of my being, I have no desire, no ability to proclaim anything except the innumerable prolongations of your incarnate being in the world of matter." That whatever he was doing, there was the celebration of the Mass. This whole little book, which is, I think, so remarkable, came out of his experience where he was engaged in his paleontological work in China, where he was out in the desert and in the fields where there was no altar. And here was the holy day, Sunday, and no altar, no chalice, no host, none of the paraphernalia which a priest is accustomed to have in order to celebrate the Mass. And it suddenly came to him out of his contemplation and meditation in the midst of his work that he was celebrating the Mass of the world. A beautiful book that arose out of that, combining, you see, the life of contemplation, the life of action. In other words, the life of meditation and the life of work or action need not be, they should not be, and ultimately they cannot be regarded as separate. And this, I think, is one of the keys. So often, you see, we may say, well, this is my meditation time. Don't disturb me. Don't come around. Don't let the telephone ring. Don't let the cat in now. Don't do anything because this is the meditation time. Can we really ultimately separate it? Or should we bring this, finally, out of long practice? Yes, of course we need a time. I'm not saying we don't need a particular time. But supposing something else comes along, can we meditate on the bus going to work, on the train? Can we meditate in the midst of some emergency that arises? So it seems to me what the ideal is this flowing together, this integration. And therefore, only as our practice of meditation has an effect upon our lives, a real effect in terms of our actions every day, can it be said to be true meditation, transforming us in a creative way. And only as our daily activities flow naturally out of the deeper awareness of the ground of our being can they be said to be meaningful and helpful, transforming in a creative way the world about us. And so integral meditation is really integral living. Recently, in the Quest Book program, we published a book called Integral Yoga. And much of this is hinted at in this book. I have tried to introduce some other ideas that are not focused there. But in that book, Dr. Chaudhry suggests that there are 5 basic principles in what he has termed integral yoga or integral meditation, which result in 3 aspects of right action. A simple enumeration even of these will indicate at once, I think, the underlying concept which I have been trying to express. The principles as he gives them, and it seems to me they flow very much, coincide with what I've been saying, are self-offering, inner exploration, self-energizing, critical evaluation, and existential experience. And I'll come back to these in a moment. Now all of these give rise to what we might call right action, the basic aspects of which are self-expression, self-poise, and self-donation. And I think you see at once, just in giving these terms, how closely they are interrelated, so that one can say the life of meditation is the life of action, and the life of action is the life of meditation. Self-offering, first of all. What we're talking about is the process of self-alignment. Self-offering depends upon the complete alignment of the self to be offered as a channel for meditation. Alignment of the elements of the self, and alignment of the whole self with cosmic reality. It is an offering, therefore, in the sense that this alignment is brought about by the recognition that there is a purpose, which is the integration of the individual with the universal creative process. And so meditation, in that sense, is an act of dedication to the cosmic purpose of existence. And as we do perform that act of dedication, it is a self-offering. But in order to perform this act, self-exploration is necessary, which includes both the observation of both the self and the not self, which calls for the techniques of concentration and imagination. One probes the depths of the immortal self, and in doing so there is a self-energizing that is called into being. It reaches its height when the divine spark in man leaps into a flame, because it is as though something, well, we always use these up and down, and it's not up and down or in or out really, but it's as though something from above touched it and it flamed forth. And we say there is light, there is illumination, there is an awareness that is overpowering. But this self-energizing is called into being when there is this alignment and exploration of what is the depth of the self. For there certainly is within every individual an energy potential. In the East, of course, this has been called, as we may all know, Kundalini. This is a power within man. And in modern psychology, I think it is, I relate this to the libido, the psychic energy which is present within us. We have available to us, in other words, an energizing force by which there can come about a true conversion in consciousness, which is simply a turning about of consciousness, a refocusing of consciousness, an intensification of existence. And when we know how to tap this energy potential, to utilize it constructively and creatively, then there is a new dimension in our lives in terms of what we are able to accomplish. It is really like a high voltage power, which can, of course, cause damage. And this is where, indeed, in some practices of meditation and yoga, awakening this energy potential too soon, too rapidly, without proper controls, can, as it were, be like turning on an electric switch and not having an insulated wire there, very definitely, and damage is done. And therefore it's been compared to fire, which can burn. Now there are times when it's useful to burn up some things, but there are other times when fire needs to be under control, and certainly in this case needs to be under control. So as a result, a clear sense of values must be present, And for this reason, critical evaluation has been included as an essential ingredient in meditation. Critical evaluation, which is really what we've talked about already as reflection. Reflection based on a value system. And this involves a sense of responsibility. For what purpose are we using this energizing potential within us? You see, to what end are we using this? This is the key question always. What is the purpose in our awakening this energy potential? And so the final phase may be called existential experience, which is the creative phase developed out of a sense of values. That, in other words, if I engage in the practice of meditation, it is in order that I may, in some manner, become a better channel for service in the world. There is a purpose beyond the immediate personal self. May contribute in some meaningful manner because I believe the universe is meaningful. And this phase then is based on some kind of direct insight into the ultimate ground of existence. We bring the non-temporal now into the temporal. We make immanent the transcendent. There is freedom and spontaneity in action because we act in harmony with the underlying law, the universal law of life. Action, in other words, and here is where we turn now from this inward movement. Action now is no longer engaging in some humdrum task from which we hope to escape just as soon as possible in order to return to meditation, which often is the way. If we can wash the dishes twice as fast, even if we break all the cups, at least we can get back to the peace and quiet of meditation. If we can get the children off to school half an hour earlier, perhaps we'll have time for meditation, even if it means they're standing out in the cold waiting for the school bus. Whatever it may be, if we can cook a quicker dinner, we can get back to meditation sooner or have a longer period, and so on. Action is often seen as simply as an escape, or we hope to escape from it in order to return to this inner condition. But in this condition, in this awareness of the freedom and spontaneity of action which arises naturally out of the contemplative life, it is not the imprisonment of the soul, but its creative release in daily existence. I act because I must act in the world as it is. And I act in accordance with the need at the moment. Action then does not degenerate into routine or become mechanized. It is creative and it is recreative because it flows from an inner spirit of constant awareness. It flows from an attitude of mind and heart that is always present no matter what we are doing. And so action comes to have three aspects: self-expression, self-poise, and self-donation. Self-expression means simply that each individual has his own unique center of being and becoming. In the Sanskrit, it is called svadharma, his own particular beingness, the isness of the individual. And when he has touched that center through meditation, his action outwardly is an expression of that self-being or self-becoming, and so the action becomes meaningful, joyous, free. It is the natural action that flows because he has touched his own center of the self, his own immortality. When we have touched this deep center of what is the essential being, what is our own essential nature through meditation, there comes, I think, a self-poise in all our actions. A quiet confidence is born, a confidence out of which there is the courage to act in accordance with our own nature, svadharma, our own interior being. the courage to act in accordance with the deep center within. And this self-poise, I think, is so seen, it's so demonstrated, evidenced in the saints, the mystics, in the really ordinary individuals who have engaged in meditation over a long period of time. One is aware of an interior poise that nothing outside seems to disturb. We are enabled to maintain an inward calm and even temper in the midst of all the changes of fortune. One acts and yet does not act. It is a kind of non-action in action, because there is a core of imperturbability in all our movements. Not an easy condition, but an ideal condition. As I said earlier, I'm giving this talk to myself to remind myself that this can be present, so that an emergency arises, there is that center that is never touched by that emergency. One acts and yet does not act. And so out of this self-poise, which results from true self-expression, action is done as a self-donation, a self-giving. One gives oneself wholly where he is. I think so often of a beautiful little book that I came upon some years ago, written by a member of the Society of Friends, the Quaker movement. And the title of the book perhaps explains best what its contents were, or are. The book is still in existence. The title simply was, Being Present Where One Is. Being present where one is. Now, it is this kind of self-giving that arises as an action, quite naturally, out of this background of meditation. How often we are not present where we are. My physical body may be before you. I may seem to be giving you my attention, but I am not present. My mind is going on about what I'm going to do tonight, what I'm going to do tomorrow, what I'm going to do next week, and I'm thinking, I wonder how quickly I can get away from this person. How can I escape? Is there some way I can end this conversation? All sorts of things are going on, and we are not present. So being present where one is the completion of this action in which there is a full self-giving of oneself. For in this, our ultimate loyalty is to the inward vision of truth, but our action is hallowed because it is offered without any preconditions, without any reserve, on the altar of the ultimate good of all humanity. This, of course, is the final self-giving, the action that is out of the expression of that interior vision of the immortal self, which is one with the self in all, which gives that poise of confidence that enables one to act truly at the moment, and in that action gives himself fully to whatever is the action. So this is what I suggest is the whole reason, really, for undertaking meditation at all, for even beginning the practice of meditation, is for this essential purpose, that this will come about, the integral meditation that is the integrated life, in which meditation and action are mutually balanced, harmonized, and there is the complete flow. Meditation becomes such an integral part of our lives that it is no longer only a practice engaged in whenever we find it convenient or for a certain period each day, regardless of any other need. We may continue to practice it in that way, and I would hope we would. And indeed, this is necessary, because the more we practice, just as the pianist does not, the genius in the piano does not cease to practice his scales. He continues to practice every day. So in this life. A period of time, yes, is devoted to the practice of meditation, but it comes to the point where this forms the background of our entire life. And then, therefore, as I've said, when an emergency arises, and we cannot meditate at our usual time, but are disturbed for some reason, the meditation still takes place, even as we act, to meet whatever the need that has arisen. And this is, as I say, what I mean by integral meditation. And if meditation does not serve that purpose, I think, quite frankly, we have missed a very essential value in our lives. We've missed something that is thrilling, that is joyous, that is recreative constantly, so that we are always new people, inwardly renewed. Our actions are no longer just reactions. They are truly actions flowing from that center. So obviously, there is no one meditation that will illustrate what I've been talking about, no one meditation that will give, as it were, the summation of this kind of integral meditation. But tonight, therefore, I'd like to use for our meditation together one that I think perhaps begins to open the way to this kind of integrated and whole approach to the subject of the life that is complete in meditation, in action. And so if we can have a period of meditation now, as we have been having each week. And align ourselves inwardly. Take a comfortable position so that the body does not intrude itself on our attention. We feel inwardly quiet, at ease. All the usual thoughts, concerns, anxieties are set aside, and the mind is still as a deep pool, reflective. Look for the light. The light is hidden everywhere. It is in every rock and in every stone. The light is nearer than aught else, within a man's very heart. All comes forth from the light, and to the light all shall return. Look for the light. Follow the light. The sun's rays shine on all alike. He who would feel their warmth upon his skin must leave his shut-in cave and seek the open air. He who would experience the divine compassion in his soul must leave the cave of self and seek the wider being. Follow the light. I am the light. In the midst of our being stands the Lord of past and future. The inner self is always seated in the heart of man. Let a man draw that self forth from his body with steadiness. Let him know that self as the bright, as the immortal, yea, as the bright, as the immortal. I am the light. Let the light shine. Ye shall go out with joy and be led forth with peace. Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. The splendor of the whole world will be thine, and all darkness shall flee from thee. Let the light shine. Thank you very much.